For almost 75 years, the FBI's top 10 most wanted list has helped bring down some of the nation's most dangerous criminals. As for what makes the list special, it only features criminals that the FBI deems to be especially serious threats to society. And to get on it, you basically have to do something extremely messed up or have a very lengthy record of major crimes. The story behind the list goes that back in 1949, a reporter asked the FBI to list out the 10 toughest guys that they were trying to catch so they could ask the public for help. After obtaining the list, the reporter published the criminals' pictures on the front page of the Washington Daily News, and the rest is history. Since then, the FBI has been able to catch almost 500 wanted fugitives thanks to public tips. These are the current criminals on the list. Bhadresh Kumar Chetanbhai Patel. On April 12, 2015, a CCTV camera captured two Dunkin' Donuts employees, one male and one female, walking towards the shop's back room at around 9:30 p.m. before disappearing from view. A few seconds later, the man comes back into the camera's view, and it seems as if nothing out of the ordinary took place in the minute that went down between the two clips. A few minutes later, customers alerted the police when they didn't see any employees in the shop, and that's when the cops discovered something horrifying. Lying on the floor of the shop's back room was an Indian woman named Palak, lifeless, who had been pummeled to death by the man in the footage. As it was later revealed, the man who took Palak's life was her husband, Bhadresh Kumar. As the authorities later learned, the couple had been through a series of major arguments in the months leading up to that day. According to court documents, the two of their visas were about to expire in a few weeks. Palak wanted to go back to India, but Bhadresh Kumar wanted to stay in the US, and it looks like he couldn't find a better way to communicate his frustration with the situation than to brutally take his wife's life. After the crime, Bhadresh Kumar was last seen taking a taxi from a hotel in New Jersey to a train station in Newark, but what he did after that is really anyone's guess. To bring more attention to a suspect who might otherwise walk away scot-free, the FBI placed him on the most wanted list. As of today, there's a $250,000 reward to bring the suspect into custody, but almost 10 years after the crime, it looks like that won't happen anytime soon. Alejandro Rosales Castillo. The youngest suspect on the most wanted list, 26-year-old Alejandro Rosales Castillo, has been on the FBI's radar for more than 8 years. In 2016, he shot his female coworker Sandy Lee in a wooded area in Cabarrus County, North Carolina. A few days later, the female victim's car was located at a bus station in Phoenix, Arizona. As the authorities later found out, there were multiple people involved in the case, with the main ones being the victim, a woman named Amia Feaster, and Alejandro himself, all of whom worked together at a restaurant in Charlotte. During the investigation, the cops learned that Sandy Lee and Alejandro had briefly dated, and after their breakup, Castillo started dating his other coworker, Amia Feaster. According to court documents, Sandy Lee had apparently lent some money to Alejandro, and on August 9th of that year, he texted her to meet up with him at a Quick Trip located on Eastway Drive in Charlotte, claiming that he was going to pay her back. Disturbingly, that's when Castillo decided to rob her at gunpoint, take her life, and flee to Mexico. In an eerie clip of CCTV footage that was later released by the authorities, the suspect can be seen crossing the Mexican border through Nogales, Arizona, along with his girlfriend Amia. A couple of months later that same year, Amia turned herself into the authorities in Mexico and was charged with accessory after the fact of felony murder and larceny of a motor vehicle. Based on her testimony, she and Alejandro had been staying with the killer's cousin. At some point, Castillo had once again disappeared with no explanation, and that's when she decided to turn herself in. As of 2024, the FBI has no further clues that could lead to Castillo's arrest. Right now, all they know is that he's probably still living in Mexico. The last time he was seen, he wore his hair short and shaved on the sides, but that's pretty much all they have to go on. As of today, there's still a $250,000 reward out for his arrest, but there have been no further updates on his case. Before we move on, I wanted to take some time to talk about this video's sponsor, Aura, which has become a really big deal lately because hackers may have just stolen the social security numbers of every American. You may not have heard, but over 2.9 billion records were stolen from National Public Data, which provides personal information to employers and others doing background checks. And these records don't just include surface-level information either, like I had originally assumed when I first heard about this. But instead, they include information like a person's full name, address, date of birth, phone number, and most importantly, their social security number. And different members of hacker groups around the internet have reportedly released this information for completely free online. This is an extreme breach of privacy, and hearing about this, I'm honestly surprised it didn't make as much news as it did. Thankfully, I don't have to worry about breaches like this because I use Aura. Aura is constantly monitoring your personal data, including your social security number, across billions of data points like the dark web and public court records to detect and alert you to potential identity theft. They even give you up to $5 million in identity theft insurance should the worst case scenario happen. I also get things like transaction monitoring, a VPN, antivirus, a password manager, and a lot more. I get this all in one app at one affordable price. I'm not leaving myself and my family vulnerable to data breaches, and if you don't want to either, you can go to aura.com/chillingscares. Ruja Ignatova. In 2016, the Bulgarian entrepreneur Ruja Ignatova stepped on stage in a beautiful red dress at the Coin Rush global event in Wembley, London to talk about her vision for the future of her crypto company OneCoin. During the presentation, she claimed that in 2 years, everyone would forget about Bitcoin and that OneCoin would dominate the crypto world as the one true cryptocurrency. It's hard to imagine that any of her excited, applauding investors knew that they were stepping into what was later described by the New York Times as one of the biggest scams in history. For several years, Ruja, or the crypto queen as she's known nowadays, promised her buyers a 5-fold and even 10-fold return on their investment in OneCoin. Normally, these kinds of claims are an immediate red flag, but because the entire world was scrambling to get on the crypto action, a ton of investors jumped at the opportunity without thinking twice, resulting in a massive OneCoin buying frenzy. Between 2014 and 2016, OneCoin raked in more than $4 billion from unsuspecting investors, with more than $50 million coming from investors in the US. As the investors learned when they bought into OneCoin, the company was pretty much a pyramid scheme in which they were rewarded for recruiting their friends to buy it as well. And for a while, the shady multi-level marketing model seemed to be working for Ruja. However, in 2016, a lot of her investors started complaining that they were really struggling to sell their OneCoins and that they didn't see how they'd ever recoup their investments. Word started to spread online that OneCoin was a scam, which drew the attention of the media as well as federal investigators. Unfortunately, it was a little too late by then. Less than a year and a half after her presentation in Wembley, Ruja got on a plane from Bulgaria to Greece and was never seen again. Disturbingly, during the investigations, a bunch of really messed up emails written by Ruja were leaked by federal investigators in which the crypto queen made it more than clear that she knew she was scamming people out of their hard-earned money from the very start. In some of her emails, she admitted that the company wasn't actually mining any coins, that her coin was trash, and that her investors were idiots for trusting her. In one of her emails, she proposed an exit strategy to her partner Carl Greenwood, which consisted of taking the money, running away, and blaming somebody else for the whole thing. During the investigation, Carl ended up pleading guilty to wire fraud and conspiracy to launder money, for which he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. As it was later revealed, the FBI had been onto Ruja long before she fled from Bulgaria, even recruiting her American boyfriend to look into her company's practices for them. After learning about her extremely sketchy business practices and her grand scheme to steal billions of dollars from investors all around the world, she was charged with wire fraud, money laundering, and securities fraud. This promptly landed her a spot on the FBI's most wanted list, becoming only the 11th woman to earn that distinction. Looking into her past to find clues as to what could have influenced Ruja to do something so nefarious, federal investigators found some pretty interesting stuff. As it turns out, Ruja was fluent in 4 languages, was extremely intelligent, once had a job at a high-ranking consulting firm, and had been obsessed with fashion and maintaining her image from a very young age. It was only with the benefit of hindsight that prosecutors were able to clearly see how she used all these qualities to carry out her malicious plans. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like the FBI will find her anytime soon. It's been rumored that after fleeing the country, the crypto queen may have drastically altered her appearance with plastic surgery, and is believed to travel with armed guards at all times. Disturbingly, there have also been several allegations that she was murdered by an accomplice, but this hasn't been proven. If she is still alive, the FBI suspects Ruja is traveling on a German passport to the United Arab Emirates, Bulgaria, Germany, Russia, Greece, and multiple countries in Eastern Europe. Considering how elusive she's been since her disappearance almost 8 years ago, it's unlikely the FBI will ever find out what became of Ruja Ignatova after pulling off one of the largest financial scams in history. Arnaldo Jimenez. On May 12, 2012, Arnaldo Jimenez and his wife Estrella went out to celebrate their wedding in a black 2006 4-door Maserati. Less than 24 hours after the couple had said their vows, Arnaldo knifed his wife to death in the car, dragged her into the bathroom tub of her apartment in Burbank, Illinois, and disappeared without a trace. When Estrella didn't come back to pick up her kids at school the next day, her family called the cops, who ended up finding Estrella's remains still in her wedding dress in her bathtub. Immediately, a nationwide search for Arnaldo was launched, but by that time the suspect was long gone. During the investigation, it was revealed that Jimenez had reached out to a friend before fleeing and told him, "If anyone asks where I am, tell them I went to Mexico." Since then, the authorities have received multiple tips that Jimenez may have fled to Durango or Tamaulipas, Mexico, where he is believed to be hiding out with family members. Initially, a $100,000 reward was issued for anyone with information that could lead to his arrest, but 4 years after he was placed on the most wanted list, the FBI increased the reward to $250,000. Burbank police have stated that in the past 12 years they've received hundreds of tips about Arnaldo's whereabouts, but none of them had led to anything significant. After the crime, investigators traced his phone and determined that he had traveled from Chicago to Tennessee, then to Arkansas, and from there to Hidalgo, Texas, very close to the Mexican border. They were unfortunately unable to determine where he went after that. Police have also revealed that the car in which Arnaldo carried out his heinous crime was never found. If the suspect is ever caught, he'll be spending the rest of his life in prison for first-degree murder and unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. But based on how things have played out since the last time he was seen, it's unlikely Arnaldo will ever pay for his atrocious crime. Vatel Ominison. As the leader of one of Haiti's largest and most violent criminal gangs, Craze Barry, Vatel Ominison, which do not let his name fool you, he is indeed not innocent, has terrorized the region for years, earning a spot on the FBI's most wanted list for his role in a string of brutal kidnappings and murders. In October 2021, he collaborated with the notorious 400 Mawozo gang to carry out the high-profile kidnapping of 17 Christian missionaries in Haiti. Disturbingly, 5 of the kidnapping victims were children, one as young as 8 months old. Held at gunpoint, the hostages were reportedly kept captive for 2 months while the gangs demanded a ransom of $1 million per hostage. It was only after an anonymous donor paid an undisclosed sum to Craze Barry and 400 Mawozo that the missionaries were finally released. Based on court documents, Innocent and his crew ended up spending the ransom money on weapons. That same year, the Haitian president was assassinated, which caused Innocent's influence to grow exponentially in the chaos that engulfed the country. In the aftermath of the assassination, Craze Barry claimed new territories and expanded their ranks quicker than the cops could even keep track of. In 2023, Craze Barry boasted an estimated 600 members, many of whom were young children who were involuntarily recruited to serve Innocent's criminal organization. Almost exactly 1 year after the kidnapping of the Christian missionaries, Craze Barry kidnapped 2 U.S. citizens under Innocent's orders, Marie Odette Franklin and Jean Franklin. Unfortunately, one of the victims did not survive, while the other was held for a $300,000 ransom. Somehow, Innocent still managed to walk away scot-free. In April 2024, CNN released an interview where Innocent brazenly showed off his luxury home, which sticks out like a sore thumb in the extreme poverty surrounding him. Surrounded by gold-rimmed couches and chairs, Innocent explained to the reporter how he came to power. In the interview, he shamelessly blamed Haiti's corruption on the country's politicians, refusing to take any responsibility for his own actions. Interestingly, he also alleged that before becoming the leader of Craze Barry, he had once owned multiple legitimate businesses, including a hotel and a rental car company, but said his companies were destroyed by the government. According to multiple crime analysts, Innocent was once a political activist before he turned to violent crime to maximize his influence. Back in the US, Innocent is wanted by the FBI for an insanely long list of crimes, including kidnapping for ransom, theft, murder, assault, vehicle theft, and destruction of property. There's a $2 million reward for information leading to his arrest, but with powerful connections and an armed gang, it'll be pretty tough to ever bring him to justice. Omar Alexander Cardenas. In 2022, the FBI released 2 eerie before and after clips of a man walking into and then running away from a shopping mall area on August 15, 2019. The man seen in the video is 29-year-old Omar Alexander Cardenas, and let's just say that he didn't exactly go shopping in the time that elapsed between those 2 clips. After disappearing from the camera's view, Omar walked up to a man standing outside the Hair Icon barber shop at an outdoor shopping center and fired several rounds from his semi-automatic handgun at his head, killing him instantly. Immediately after committing the crime, Omar fled the scene a little after 4 p.m. as he can be seen in the eerie FBI footage. A suspected member of the Pierce Street gang in Los Angeles, and often going by the nickname Dollar, Omar is suspected to have fled to Mexico to seek refuge among his relatives. In September 2021, a federal arrest warrant was issued for the suspect after he was charged with murder and unlawful flight to avoid prosecution, thanks to which he was pinned on the most wanted billboard. Even though he committed a brutal crime pretty much in broad daylight and didn't exactly shy away from the cameras after doing it, the cops seem to know surprisingly little about Omar. The only things they really know about him are that he's around 300 pounds, wears thick prescription glasses, has at least one tattoo, and is considered armed and dangerous. Which alone is hardly enough to track down a criminal who's crossed international borders to flee prosecution. With time, hopefully more information will surface leading to his potential extradition and arrest, but for now, it looks like Omar will remain a most wanted criminal. Yulan Adonai Archaga Carayas. Back in the 80s, a gang known as the Mara Salvatrucha was set up to protect Salvadorian immigrants from other gangs in the Los Angeles area. Fast forward a couple of decades, and the Mara, or the MS-13 for short, had become one of the most brutal and violent criminal organizations in the world. Nowadays, MS-13 has a strong presence in El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, the US, Canada, and even Spain. They engage in all kinds of criminal activity, from drug trafficking, human trafficking, extortion, murder, and racketeering, often using extreme violence to maintain their influence and control. For many years, a man named Yulan Adonai Archaga Carayas operated as the head of MS-13's criminal activities in Honduras, providing support and resources to the gang in Central America and the US with firearms, narcotics, and loads of cash. Often operating under his alias Porky, Yulan is wanted by the FBI for trafficking multi-ton loads of drugs through Honduras to the US and for the killing of several rival gang members. Among Porky's colorful criminal charges, you'll find everything from murder to racketeering conspiracy to drug importation to possession of machine guns. Even though he's only around 160 pounds, Yulan is considered one of the most powerful men in Honduras, as the MS-13 gang has had the country in a chokehold for years. The most shocking part of the story is that at one point, Porky had already been apprehended by the Honduran authorities and was even taken to a courthouse for a hearing on charges of murdering 2 Honduran prosecutors. But during the hearing, 20 armed men dressed up in the same clothes as the anti-gang police units walked into the building escorting a veiled suspect and suddenly opened fire on the guards. In just a few seconds, the men subdued the guards and safely escorted Porky out of the courthouse, killing 4 police officers in the process. For obvious reasons, Porky is considered armed and extremely dangerous. Due to the sheer nature of his crimes, the FBI is offering $5 million to anyone who can provide information leading to his arrest. One of the things that makes it extremely difficult to track a suspect like Porky down is that he's taken every possible measure to fly under the radar. Although he's believed to still be in Honduras, he and his security team use untraceable numbers from Israel and Poland, and he goes to extreme lengths to keep his whereabouts a secret when he contacts his family. Although the hunt for Porky is far from over, he's likely to remain one of the most elusive and dangerous fugitives on the FBI's most wanted list for years to come. Alexis Flores. One seemingly peaceful afternoon in July 2000, 5-year-old Ariana De Jesus was playing on the street in Philadelphia with her sister and friends when her mom went out for a quick trip to the store. When her mom came back, she started living every parent's worst nightmare. Ariana had been taken by a suspicious man. Immediately, her mother reported her missing, triggering a citywide search for the 5-year-old girl. In a desperate effort to bring more attention to the disappearance, Ariana's family and friends covered every neighborhood wall, light post, and stop sign with flyers and missing posters, but nobody had any clue what had happened to the little girl. Unfortunately, after a few weeks of searching, the cops found her unresponsive in the basement of an abandoned apartment building just a few blocks away from where she had been taken. Disturbingly, the authorities also found a t-shirt featuring a bold political logo at the crime scene, which they deduced belonged to the suspect. During the investigation, a man came forward stating that he was pretty certain the t-shirt had belonged to a guy he only knew as Carlos, a drifter he had once employed as a handyman. Unfortunately, despite the promising lead, the case went cold for several years, leaving Ariana's family devastated and confused. It wasn't until 2007 that the authorities were able to analyze the shirt again thanks to recent advances in DNA technology, and what they found changed the course of the investigation forever. The DNA in the shirt was a perfect match with that of a man named Alexis Flores, who had been arrested in Arizona in 2002 for shoplifting and in 2004 for forgery. Unfortunately, by the time his DNA was linked to the crime, he had already been deported to Honduras years earlier for other, less serious crimes. As the police would later find, finding Alexis Flores was going to be a lot more difficult than they initially thought. Throughout his colorful criminal career, Alexis had provided multiple fraudulent dates of birth and names. Despite his inclusion in the most wanted list, the only things the FBI really knows about him are that Alexis is around 5'4", 130 pounds, and has visible scars on his forehead and right cheek. Due to his crimes, he's obviously also considered armed and extremely dangerous. With a $250,000 reward on his head for the crimes of kidnapping and murder, you would think that someone would have come forward with information on this guy, but 24 years after the crime, Alexis has remained unfound. Wilver Villegas Palomino. The National Liberation Army, or ELN, is a Marxist-Leninist guerrilla insurgency group in Colombia, often referred to as Colombia's last true insurgency and one of Latin America's most powerful criminal organizations. In the past few years, the ELN has expanded aggressively into Venezuela, thanks to which the National Liberation Army now has over 6,000 active members. Interestingly, for the first few decades after its foundation, the group mostly focused their efforts on kidnapping, extortion, and attacking oil infrastructure. But over time, the ELN stopped shying away from drug trafficking and became deeply involved in the international drug trade, earning them the attention of the FBI. In 2023, Wilver Villegas Palomino became the 530th addition to the FBI's most wanted list on multiple serious charges ranging from narco-terrorism to murder to drug trafficking. Often running under the alias The Hog, Palomino is a high-ranking member of the National Liberation Army who's been involved in a 20-year conspiracy to distribute drugs from Colombia to the US, thanks to which a warrant for his arrest was issued back in 2020. Wilver has also been accused of murdering multiple human rights advocates in Venezuela and the Catatumbo region in Colombia between 2017 and 2019. Due to his high rank and his responsibility in flooding the streets of Houston and other major US cities with drugs, the United States Department of State's Narcotics Rewards Program is offering a reward of up to $5 million for information leading to Palomino's arrest. As of today, it's a complete mystery where this guy is, but considering the ELN oversees the production of over 200 tons of drugs which are later distributed worldwide, obviously including the US, it makes sense why he was put on the list. Donald Eugene Fields II. Since 2022, Donald Eugene Fields has been wanted by the FBI for the alleged trafficking of at least one child in Missouri between 2013 and 2017. According to the authorities, Fields took a 14-year-old girl and offered her to his friend Ted Sartori Jr. in exchange for cash, cars, motorcycles, vacations, and Christmas presents. Last known to live in Franklin County, Missouri, Fields has apparently been moving around the country since 2022, working sporadic jobs as a tree trimmer and independently selling used cars in an effort to fly under the radar. Based on court documents, it's believed that Donald probably took more than one victim, and that he might be hiding out with his girlfriend Jennifer Isgriggs, who is also wanted on a felony warrant for failure to provide child support. Since 2022, the cops have received multiple tips indicating that Fields spent some time in the Tampa area, and as soon as they heard that, they started running Facebook ads with his face on a most wanted poster to ask for the public's assistance in locating him. Unfortunately, it's likely that by then Fields had already fled to Stover, Missouri. The FBI has also placed large billboards with Fields' face in cities where he's known to travel, but so far it seems like he's managed to stay a step ahead of the cops. Earlier in 2024, Sartori, Fields' partner in crime, pleaded guilty to his charges and will face up to 30 years in prison. He'll also likely have to pay $25,000 in restitution to his victim. Based on court documents, he'll be officially sentenced in early November 2024. As per the FBI's description of the suspect, Fields has multiple scars on his body as well as a tribal print tattoo on his right shoulder. With such a big effort being made by the FBI to make this guy's face known, hopefully someday he'll be recognized by someone and promptly turned into the authorities. But for now, the cops have urged the public to consider him armed and dangerous.